Hello, this is Erica with Launching Legacies. Welcome to our daily devotional. Today we are going to be looking at the prophet Jeremiah, which means the name Jeremiah means Yahweh establishes. And the book of Jeremiah has 52 chapters. So here goes the thing about Jeremiah though. So Jeremiah is quite a long book. It's quite extensive. This is true. A lot of prophecy going out in the book of Jeremiah. But Jeremiah is also the writer of Lamentations. So if you've been pacing with me chronologically, we've been working backwards from the end of the Old Testament into the major prophets that are further earlier on in the Old Testament. And then you'll find that between Ezekiel and Jeremiah, those two books, is the book of Lamentations. And Lamentations, I'm going to talk briefly about because it was written by Jeremiah, is Jeremiah's laments. It's the book of his sorrows for what has gone wrong and the tragedy that has happened to Israel. And so he's crying over the nation. Like it's about God's love never ending, right? But also the dismay and the just the sorrow that comes from everything that has gone on and all the things that have gone on wrong. So make sure you take some time to read the book of Lamentations as you're reading through the prophets, because Lamentation only has 5 chapters. It's a very short book, but it's also very insightful into what was going on with Jeremiah and how sorrowed he was. Now, Jeremiah is one of, for me, a very beloved of the major prophets. He is one of my favorite major prophets. And I think it's because he is considered the weeping prophet. So because of the book of Lamentations, but also because of some of the things that's written in the book of Jeremiah. And so we know that his name means Yahweh establishes. And that's really good because that's kind of how the chapter of the book of Jeremiah starts with the call of Jeremiah. Jeremiah says he's too young. The people are not going to listen to him. God should send someone older, and God tells him, no, Jeremiah, I've established you from before you were born, and I set you to be a prophet to the nation. So it's very beautiful, the dialogue that God is reassuring Jeremiah. That's not the first time that he does it. He does it actually several times throughout, because Jeremiah, in the midst of prophesying what terrible things are about to happen, the people really mistreat him, and he really gets stigmatized for his prophecies. And what God does is he keeps reassuring Jeremiah over time. It happens several times within the book. Again, it's 52 chapters, so there's a lot of time for it to happen. But let's talk about what Jeremiah is prophesying about. So Jeremiah is prophesying the captivity of into Babylon. So he predates it. So the book of Jeremiah was written in 630 to 580 BC. So when these chapters were written, when these prophecies were given forth, there was kind of a thought of, we're invincible. Nothing's going to go wrong. This is going to all be perfect. And Jeremiah is saying something completely different, right? He is telling them, like, look, you need to look at the writing on the wall. Like, this situation is not going to turn out well. This is what's about to happen next. This is what needs to happen. And when the Israelites are captive into Babylon, Jeremiah is there behind. He stays behind. And he's left there. So it becomes a really kind of a tragic, if we look at Jeremiah, is somewhat of a tragic situation. But when we get to certain chapters, there's these glimmers of hope. And Jeremiah prophesies what will happen. It in fact does happen. Jeremiah is left behind, but he starts to talk about these glimmers of hope of what's going to happen next. Basically, God has a purpose for this time of captivity in Babylon, but the people are not going to be able to appreciate that, just like they weren't able to appreciate and receive Jeremiah. But Jeremiah doesn't stop short of giving the prophecy of the hope of a new promise of what's going to happen moving forward. And so he talks about the fate of all the nations, not just the nation of Israel and their captivity. And also he talks about the destruction of Jerusalem. But then he says, just be mindful that God is going to bring us back to our own, and he's going to call us his again, and he's going to demonstrate his love toward us, and it's going to be beautiful. And that is the work of what Jeremiah is saying. Not very positive. Again, that's one of the reasons why he's called the weeping prophet, is because he's so distressed by everything that's going on. Imagine you had to deliver what would be up to this time some of the worst news that there would be to deliver, right? Like, here you are, a young person, and they send you in to say the horrible things that are going to happen. And then when you're sent in to say it, you get received by people who act like full-blown hooligans. And I mean full-blown hooligans. Jeremiah is like, he's trapped in a cistern of sorts, and he is imprisoned in all these different ways. He just has a whole lot of problems in trying to get these people to believe this prophetic word that the Lord is saying about what's about to happen. And indeed, everything he says happens. But what the people are angry about is that they really just don't want this bad news at this time. And because he's so persistently giving it, they're just like, I don't care. You get out of here. Okay. Oh, you don't want to leave? Then we'll beat you. Okay. If you don't want to leave, then we'll throw you in this little container. Like, you don't want to leave it alone. If you don't want to prophesy what we want to hear, then you're out of here, buddy. And Jeremiah has to endure that. And then when he goes to God with crying because he's upset, he's like, God, they're mistreating me. They don't want to hear this. I don't want to be the person to say it. Like, can't we just get out of here? God is like, look, Jeremiah, change your attitude, change your perspective. Do what I called you to do. And when you've done that, then what you've said will make a difference. And Jeremiah has to suck it up. He's got to get it together. And then, and he does get it together, and he does somewhat grow up, and, he's able to endure hardship like a strong soldier. But it becomes a long process for him. And so for me, the book of Jeremiah, I think one of the reasons why he as a prophet, like just looking at his story, is so endearing, is because you can relate to it. And it's kind of got, for me, a comical type of side to it. Now, of course, that's because all these things that he's prophesying have happened so long ago. For the most part, some of them are moving forward, but because what he's prophesying, I can see I'm not worried about, right? And so I'm not living his life, and that's probably why I can look at it with such a lighthearted kind of expression. But at the end of the day, when we look at the application of Jeremiah, it is this: for one, God can call anyone. We kind of hear that with the minor prophets, but we definitely see that with Jeremiah. But also, sometimes you will be the person who knows what's coming, and you know what's about to happen because of the situations, and you won't be able to make the influence you think you're going to make. Keep going, because you need to be persistent. Keep doing what God has called you to do, because even if others mistreat you, or they scored you, or they don't really want to accept you or receive you, it doesn't mean that what you're saying is wrong. Not necessarily, especially if you've gotten with the Lord and you know that you've heard from him, and you're sure that he's told you to say, do, be, act in a certain way. Trust God, because everybody won't receive you, and it's just what it is. But it doesn't mean that we stop. Right? It doesn't mean that we quit, that we give up. Even if we have to cry, I can just imagine Jeremiah crying and prophesying, lamenting and moving forward. But even if that's what it is, we need to be able to do it. Jeremiah was. How would you fare if you were Jeremiah? And how can you change your perspective to fit that of a courageous young man? Trust God. Trust God always. Remember, Yahweh is he who establishes. That's what Jeremiah means. Yahweh establishes. All right, that's all we have for the book of Jeremiah. And I hope that you read Jeremiah and Lamentations. Maybe start with Lamentations, just 5 chapters, Jeremiah 52. So a little bit of a different perspective. But read Jeremiah and read Lamentations and find out this young man's perspective and what he had to say to the nations. It's a really interesting exchange that he has with God, and that would be helpful as well. But as you read Jeremiah, just be encouraged. Sometimes you're not well received, but it doesn't mean you shouldn't continue. Persevere, because God will show himself faithful through you. So be faithful to him. All right. I pray that you are blessed. We're praying for you. We hope that you're praying for Launching Legacies. Remember, our prayer request is that we be able to reach a larger part of the community. Please continue to pray for our ability to influence in larger areas of the community according to the will of God. And we'll be praying for you as the Lord leads us. And we'll see you again tomorrow with another of our devotionals. Until then, be blessed.